Good morning and good afternoon to everyone who's logged on today to listen to this webinar about Boral Logistics Risk Management. I'd just like to introduce myself to start with. My name is Jerome Carslake. I'm manager of the National Road Safety Partnership Program based out of ARB Group. Just to give you a quick little bit of background about the NRSPP. The program was set up as a collaborative network for Australian businesses and organisations to collaborate around road safety and risk management. Basically, the organisation's aim is to minimise work-related crashes and their consequences both internally. We bring together organisations like we have today, Boral, and from all different sectors together to get them to share their knowledge and what they do in the road safety space. So it's primarily funded by government and delivered through ARB, and it's run by an industry-led working group. So thank you all very much for participating, and I would like to bring to you a bit of an outline for today's program. It's going to run for 40 minutes, and we'll have some question times at the end. So next, I would like to, if you have any questions as you'd like to go through the forum today, please take the time, enter them into the questions box, and I will save them up, or even ask them maybe through the webinar if they're nicely timed, or save them to the very end of the webinar. So next, I'd like to introduce our speaker, and who's going to be taking us through the webinar today. So Craig, over to you, mate.
Thanks. So my name's Craig Guthrie. I'm the Compliance Manager for Boral Logistics in New South Wales and the ACT. And today I'd like to outline how we've been able to effectively integrate an efficient management system based on comprehensive training induction across our operations, and the way that that's driven some major benefits for Boral Logistics. So a little bit about Boral Logistics. So Boral Logistics delivers transport logistics in ways that minimise the risks associated with safety, compliance and security of supply. We're part of the Boral Group, a multinational company with logistics businesses operating in each state and territory of Australia. We use state-of-the-art equipment and technologies. At all times we know what each vehicle is doing, and we manage the myriad of risk and compliance issues that arise with on-road transport to very exacting standards. Our national fleet is one of Australia's largest. We deliver quarry and bulk products for Boral and other customers. We deliver bulk cement, lime and fly ash, and bulk tanker products for Boral Cement, Sun State Cement and other clients. Our bitumen tankers supply Boral asphalt plants around Australia. We operate national logistics services, managing the movement of palletised, finished and semi-finished goods for Boral and external clients. And we have a large pool of over 500 hauliers and pre-qualified subcontract carriers, which provides us with flexible capacity to meet changing customer needs. So if you added all that activity up, we would be looking at nearly over 500,000 loads each year by Boral. So a bit more specifically about Boral Logistics in New South Wales. Boral Logistics in New South Wales is a diversified logistics service provider with three core pillars. We source cartage capacity. So Boral Logistics provides strategic sourcing for cartage services. We have our own fleet comprised of company vehicles and dedicated hauliers and owner drivers, and deep relationships with a broad range of other subcontractors. The next pillar is our logistics management and our logistics coordination and project management. So basically matching that cartage capacity with transport demand in a way that optimises our logistics network and provides optimises utilisation through our multi-segment demand smoothing, which basically means that we're able to use our assets across different segments, which means that we can get efficiency gains through the nature of our business. We also deliver a high-quality customer experience through that focused fleet allocations, project and contract management facilities. So the customer service risk for our customers is managed by professional execution of the first two pillars, and the transport functional risk management is managed through our on-road operational risk, our chain of responsibility management systems, our maintenance management systems, our vehicle specifications and our driver training program. So about our cartage capacity, we source and manage heavy vehicle on-road cartage across four broad segments, so tippers, which deliver sands and aggregates, asphalt hot mix, cement, raw materials and gypsum, powder tankers, which deliver cement, fly ash and lime, and our dangerous goods, elevated temperature, liquid transport of bitumen, and our national logistics business, which delivers timber, plasterboard, bricks, masonry and roof tiles. And so flexibility to source additional cartage capacity whilst retaining control of the associated compliance issue is a core competitive advantage. So being able to go out and get more trucks and still be able to control the compliance around those guys is very important to us. And so we have hundreds of pre-qualified subcontract carriers that enable us to draw on vehicles of all shapes and sizes as the customer need arises. Some of the keys to success that we've had are training the drivers. So we make sure that our drivers are competent before they get behind the wheel working for us. We equip and support the operations. We make sure that the people that are doing the work have the right equipment and the right support to be able to do their job. We consistently analyse and interpret the data that we get from our telematics systems and other inputs, and we consistently follow up and document our non-conformances, and they're some of the main drivers to success through our processes. So the operations task. The job for our people out in the field is to be safe and compliant, delight our customers, and do it efficiently. All are equally important. We have to do all of those together, or there's no point in being here. So that's the big job of the operations, is to be safe and compliant, delight our customers, and again, they have to do it, efficiently. So the compliance role. So the role of the compliance team is to support and equip the operations to complete their task. Being compliant isn't a separate function, it's the way that the Boral logistics teams operate. Consistent and robust compliance has improved our business by making our people safer, reducing the commercial risk of non-compliance, and we've simplified the operational task by absorbing the complexity of compliance knowledge into a dedicated team and focusing the operations team on discussions intended on improving safety in the field. The guys out there don't need to be compliance experts. They don't need to have all of the knowledge in each individual area or depot or location. We centralise that, and we keep it in our team, and we spread that information out to them. So we try and keep them out doing the bits that they do very well, and we do the stuff that we do very well in our team. But again, it's the way that we do business. So a quick sort of demonstration, and this is the plainest graph that many people have probably ever seen, but it actually shows 5 years worth of work for our team and our business. And what it actually shows is the way that we can change behaviours in a very large and dispersed driver group very quickly and efficiently. This actually shows the way that we've changed our speed management practices over time. For a long time, we had a speed threshold that was set. It was set when we first installed the tracking devices, so before my time with the business, and we monitored and managed our drivers for a number of years to that threshold, to that standard, and you can see that we had sort of a level of compliance, which was actually very good compliance. And then a little while ago, we made a decision in our business that we would lower that threshold significantly and bring it closer in line with community expectations. We went through an involved consultation process with the drivers and the operations as part of this. We then brought parts of our business into the new threshold, and what we can see is that over a fairly short period of time, the driver behaviour at that new threshold came back down to basically the level that it was before the change. And so what that means in practice on the ground is that the guys know that there's going to be an outcome for a behaviour. So for a driver who's driving his truck, when he's approaching a hill and he's coming up at a certain speed to that hill, if he comes over the other side, you will to come over the other side at a certain speed, you will approach that hill in a certain way. And so by changing that speed threshold the way that we did, it meant that the driver, heading towards the hill actually has to change the way that he approaches that hill and lift his foot off the accelerator at a different point. And so he's had to change his driving behaviour. That is a seasoned driving behaviour, potentially for 20 years, but certainly for 7 or 8 years, approaching the same hills in the same manner. And again, over a short period of time, that fairly large driver group has been able to change that behaviour and adapt to the new threshold in a very short period of time. And so this sort of shows the abilities of a robust management system based on predictable outcomes for the drivers and the operations can change the seasoned driver behaviour. Hopefully that makes sense, because there's not a lot of information on that graph. So what we have in our business is we have a dedicated compliance team. So we have a compliance manager, and my role is to provide to the organisation and to my team leadership on compliance and technical knowledge, and to provide the systems to allow them to produce the outcomes that they need to produce. The admin people that you see there actually run that system, and they're the ones that are responsible for the day-to-day compliance and making sure that the things that we say we're going to do, we actually do. And they spend a lot of time and work very hard to achieve those outcomes. And so the top two people in the admin section there are managing the trucks that we control and influence the most. And you'll see down the bottom we have 2 auditors in our business as well. And so we, with our subcontractors, go into their businesses and we audit their businesses to make sure that they're meeting their legislative obligations. We do hundreds of audits every year. You can't come into our business without being audited. And so that team, again, does a very good job of making sure that our systems and our processes are followed by the broader organisation. And to give you some idea of the importance that we put on that team, 20% of the staff in Boral Logistics in New South Wales are in compliance. So we've got 25 people here. 5 of those managers, or people in the administrative side of the business, not out driving trucks and doing things, are actually in a compliance function. We will monitor 720,000 rest breaks and rules every year. Our telematics system will generate over 6,000 events every year, which we analyse and go through. We will receive and process over 40,000 work diary pages every year. We currently hold more than 20,000 driver training records on our file, and we manage those records very well. And we conduct over 400 subcontractor audits every year. So that team's got a significant workload, and we work very hard at ensuring compliance for our organisation and to support the team. So another type of risk management tool that we use in our organisation is a Geofence speed limit. And here you can see a Geofence speed limit that I set up for this presentation for the ARB group, mostly to catch Jerome on his way to get a coffee at 9 o'clock and make sure that he's not sweating. So what you actually see here is a Geofence from our tracking system, and I've set up a speed limit on that road of 50 kilometres an hour. So what I would then do would assign that against the vehicles. And any time a vehicle went through that Geofence, it would register and send some information back to a satellite, and won't bore you with too much with the details. But basically, if the truck went through there over 50 kilometres an hour, it would send an email alert would be sent to the field supervisor, and an exception will be generated in the system. And so we would use that on a regular basis to try and, for black spots or other things. But what you would see again, is that we can control or change behaviour for drivers basically anywhere, and out the front of our group would be one example of somewhere that we could do that. So in summary, in our organisation, being compliant is everyone's responsibility. We've got to ensure that the right people are doing the right job. So the administrators do the administration and the operations do the operations. We select, train and assess our drivers before they go and drive for us. We're consistent and thorough in the users of our system. So an outcome, an event that occurs in Dubbo or an event that occurs in Wagga or in metropolitan Sydney is treated the same way. There's no differentiation. It's an event, so an event A occurs, and then process B will follow that, and that resourcing the task appropriately will yield dividends for the business. Any questions?
Thank you very much for that, Craig. Well, we've got quite a few questions here which have been built on your presentation today. So let's just delve into the first one. At the very beginning of your presentation, you identified how Boral has such a diverse range of products that it transports around. Can any driver move those products around, or how do you manage that sort of risk?
So we operate some specialised equipment and some less specialised equipment across the industry. So people from the industry will understand sort of the difference between a taut liner and a pneumatic powder tanker, or an elevated temperature liquid bitumen tanker. Again, we ensure that the guys know what they're doing before they're allowed to drive different trucks and different types of trucks and work across the different parts of the organisation. Again, we have a fairly robust sort of an induction system and process system and escalation processes and some control points inside the business so that we make sure that the right drivers are driving the right trucks.
That's great, thank you. So when you say train the drivers, what does this exactly sort of involve?
So driver training for us involves a couple of different phases. So if we take a new driver as an example, we run them through our induction program, which includes an assessment of competence. So drivers will come to us with varying levels of competence. If we take the example of a pneumatic tanker again, some guys that come into our business have never operated them before. Some people that come into the organisation have operated them for 10 years. And so we'll bring those guys through. We will induct them to our management systems and our processes. We will put them in a buddy-up system, and then over a period of time, and then we will assess them as competent again. So the amount of time that takes and the amount of energy will vary on the skill level that the individual driver brings with him. But the outcome, i.e. that level of competence to the Cert 3 and road transport standards, will be verified before they're allowed to drive the truck by themselves. If that makes sense.
It does. And so what do you look for when you select your drivers?
So there's a multitude of factors that we do. So we actually do aptitude testing and other things with the drivers to make sure that their appreciation of risk is in line with our expectations from the drivers that we bring in. We look for cultural fit. We have a fairly strict regime around the way that we monitor and manage and train and induct and the expectations that we have of our operations just in general, but for the drivers in particular. And so we need people that are going to be able to work in that sort of an environment. We're very friendly. It's not like it's a very difficult environment, but there's a certain amount of accountability for actions that we expect from everyone in the operation. So those are the sort of attributes that we would be looking for as we put people through our business.
Okay. And in that graph you had earlier on, and you had that big sort of spike that picked up. Where is it? Yep, there it is. You had that sort of spike after when you made a change.
Mm-hmm.
What are the sort of things you go through? So you get a spike in non-compliance.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a bit of leeway for a period, or how do you sort of work through and managing the drivers and that sort of thing?
So if you take the perpendicular line there as the point that we've implemented that, there was probably 18 months of pre-work and trials and things that went on before that, and training and inducting and a lot of information sharing and stuff that went on, and negotiation and other things. We will then expect that people don't necessarily know how to do it on day one. And they won't necessarily be in a situation where they can get to a certain speed or whatever the case may be to trigger an event. And so it may take a little bit of time for everybody to go through that process and find out where that threshold is and where that limit comes. And so when you turn the process on, you will see that you have small individuals will do it once or twice, but when you've got a large driver base, that means that all of them are doing it once or twice as the new system is implemented. And then what you'll find is you'll have a few outliers that don't quite get it and haven't changed their behaviour. And that's the areas that you would concentrate your effort. A guy that makes a mistake once or twice and then understands how to do it and how to operate the vehicle in that way is fine, and he'll go off on his merry way. The people that can't quite come to grips with the new regime will be the focus of our attention and our efforts to support to change that habit or style. The thing that we most want to see is that the normalisation occurs over a shorter period of time. If it takes an extended period of time to change that driver group behaviour, then there's something wrong with the implementation that we'd have to go back and look at.
Cheers, thank you for just expanding on that. Just looking at this, so you mentioned telematics. How do you sort of use that to manage your compliance?
So this is one of those things where we don't actually use telematics, and I don't think anyone in the industry would use telematics to manage their compliance. Telematics is a tool that we use as part of a suite of tools that we would use. An example is just having a compliance team to help administer the paperwork, driver training and defensive driver training, and then you get into something like your telematics, which is provides that live real-time data that you can then use. The problem is for anybody that has these sorts of devices, you actually have to use them. Otherwise, they won't help you as a tool to manage your compliance. They also are a tool for the driver to use to help him understand where he's up to in his day or his week or his fortnight. The regulated driving hours for regulated heavy vehicles is not necessarily the most easily understood sort of regime, and so if you can have an electronic means of tracking and keeping that data, and the people in the truck and the people in the back office and in the allocation space all have access to the same amount of hours, amount of information about the driver's hours and where they are up to in their 14-day period, in their short rest break periods, in a 24-hour period, or even in an 8.5-hour period, and how many night rest breaks they've had in the last 14 days, and all these other complications that come into it. Providing the driver with those tools means that they're less likely to inadvertently make a breach. Very different to using a paper-based system, which we use in parallel, obviously, for a work diary, where you have to go back and manually calculate all those things. If you've got a telematics device that will actually provide you with that information, you're less likely to make inadvertent mistakes, if that makes sense.
It does. Thank you very much for explaining that. And I was just sort of, what are some of the main risks your drivers face out on the road, and what do you do to support them in addressing them?
So the risks for drivers in general, and it's not necessarily our truck drivers are any different to any other heavy vehicle driver that's on the road. There's many hopping into a truck and climbing, up into a truck and climbing back down out of a truck is a risk and a safety issue just all on its own. The ergonomics of access and egress for heavy vehicles continues to be an issue for the industry as a broader thing. So just training the drivers on how to get in and out of trucks safely is a risk that they face every day and multiple times during the day. Other road users is one of the bigger issues that the heavy vehicle road transport industry faces. We spend a lot of time training our drivers how to operate the equipment that they're operating, making sure that they know how to do that. We spend a lot of time and effort training the drivers on all the road rules and legislative compliance with heavy vehicle legislation and mass and access and dimension and load restraint. But I'm not sure how much of that sort of stuff and interaction with heavy vehicles is passed through to light vehicle or other road users. And so often a big issue that the guys have out on the road is that people just do not understand the dynamics of stopping a 64-ton truck, in a small distance. They don't necessarily understand what the signage on trucks means. Example is do not overtake heavy vehicles. Whilst we train heavy vehicles drivers in what that means, we don't necessarily train light vehicle drivers in what that means, and that's actually something that's telling them not to overtake this heavy vehicle because we constantly see car drivers cutting up inside while trucks are trying to turn left. So there's a myriad of risks, and it depends on the situation and what activities we're undertaking. But in terms of supporting those guys, we have our training systems, we have our tracking systems, we have our management systems that we have forward-facing cameras in the trucks that we use, and a lot of these things are that sort of stuff is a lag, to defend a position after an incident's occurred, but to equip them with the support of the organisation by giving them the training and an understanding of what their task is, and allowing them to do their task is probably the best thing that we can do for them.
And actually, the next sort of question sort of draws on when you talk about how truck drivers getting in and out, and I haven't really thought about that as much of a risk, but you mentioned vehicle specifications. What does Boral look for when they what are the sort of key things you look for when you purchase your trucks and your equipment?
Oh, it's many and varied, and we actually have a fleet engineering department that specialises in doing that. So again, it's a little bit like our compliance resourcing, where we actually resource truck specification and trailer specification for that matter. And those guys will actually design access steps, and you can see some of the access type steps with 3 wide steps, accessing certain trucks in the markets, and a lot of that stuff is this engineering department working with our suppliers to provide us with an ability to engineer out some of that sort of a risk where we can, if that makes sense.
That does indeed. And you mentioned the geofencing, and you're kind enough to provide the example of reducing my risk going for coffee. What are some of the other sort of areas where do you actually apply geofence in your sort of routes? What are the sort of reasons and places that you put them in to try and manage or reduce the risk of your trucks on the road?
So to use an example of the ARB group, so if an ARB group was a member of the general public or a community that had a concern about heavy vehicle speed, or was a customer that wanted an assurance about heavy vehicle speed on a certain patch of road, or there was a black spot and our organisation wanted to ensure that our trucks were travelling at a certain speed or below on a stretch of road, we would deploy a geofence to provide us with that information about the truck speed through that area. we would then we would probably see if we installed a geofence, we would train and induct the drivers at the location of that geofence. We would probably see a similar spike to what we saw earlier. As the trucks came into the geofence, they initially wouldn't understand necessarily that it was there, and that they were going to be speeding at a certain point when they got to an imaginary line that they can't see on the road. And we would see that their behaviour would not be compliant for a short term, and then as the event analysis and our non-conformance reporting system sort of kicked in, you would see that their behaviour would change over time, and we would then provide the data of the speed of the trucks going through that, or the number of events that have occurred over that speed, to the community group or to the customer, or back to the driver group themselves, about how that process has gone.
Wow, great. Thank you for that. And just the last sort of question that sort of come in from everyone is, when you say pre-qualified, what do you sort of mean by that? What does that involve for a company to become pre-qualified to work with Boral?
So, for us, and I don't want to go into too much detail about that, but the main thing for us is that they can demonstrate that they're going to meet our standards. So we ask them that they can demonstrate that they meet their legislative obligations, plus a few other Boral standards on top of that. So we make sure that they're doing the must-to-haves, and then and a few nice-to-haves that we need, and there might be a few industry-specific things that we need for delivering of asphalt or whatever the case may be. That we need to make sure that these guys are aware of and have implemented in their business before they come and work for us. And so again, we go with our auditing team, and we go out into the organisations, and we ask them to demonstrate that they're meeting those standards. If they meet those standards, then they can work for us. If they don't meet that standard, they need to go away and do a little bit more work, and then come back to us when they can demonstrate that they're meeting those standards.
Thank you very much, Craig. If you wouldn't mind just going towards the end of our slides there, thank you very much for taking your time today and willing to, once again, build on the case study which you developed for the NRSUP, which is, you can see on the website right here. And there's a bit more detail in there. And yeah, so thank you very much for your time, Craig.
Thank you.
And thank you to everyone else who participated today. And look forward to hopefully anyone signing up and being part of our next sort of webinar. So thank you all.